Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are talking about the Amsterdam trip on Real Housewives of Orange County. We'll also be covering the Real Housewives of Miami, and then I have some exciting updates for you and a little bit about a trip that I recently took. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the Real Housewives of Orange County. Last week's episode has the ladies at Sherman Gardens having a luncheon, which is a non-bridal shower for Jenn. It's the weirdest thing, but for some reason, Jenn does not want to celebrate like a typical bride. And so Shannon decides that she's going to have a luncheon for her and finds it fitting to spend $2,000 on the place settings alone. Now, there are some questions as to the motives behind this gesture. We may or may not get into it a little bit later. I will leave you to speculate why you think Shannon, who basically didn't even acknowledge Jennifer's existence until this season, is the one girl out of the entire group that is throwing a shower for her. I don't know, but I'm going to move on. In walks Tamra, in walk the other girls, and what was of note was the fact that Tamra said the door is no longer open and had no interest in even saying hello to Gretchen. So good, let's move on. The ladies decide that, or somebody mentions, hey, let's give Jenn our most sage marriage advice. And so Tamra says the second time you know better. Someone, I can't remember who, says communication. Emily says find your person. I think Gina is the one who says don't lose yourself. Gretchen says something about being friends. And Heather essentially says, fuck the haters. Like, live your best marriage and don't worry about what anybody else says. I think those are all relatively good pieces of advice for someone getting married, right? Nothing wrong with that. So then they get to talking about the girls' trip, and it's so unnatural the way it comes up. They start talking about going somewhere and then maybe somewhere warm. And then Shannon chimes in to say that her daughter has been having a really good time in Europe and maybe they could go somewhere in Europe so she could stop by and see her. And oh, by the way, her daughter's been having a blast in Amsterdam. Heather chimes in, oh, my parents lived in Amsterdam for 15 years. So, to Amsterdam they're going. And then we see a scene with Heather and Terry checking in with one another. Terry's checking in with good old realtor and finds that their home is still on the market, still has not sold. But houses with that price point generally take a while to sell. And apparently they're just looking for one buyer and it's going to be coming soon. So we see that, and then we see that Heather's mom sent dad's ashes in a, I don't know, white birthday bag or paper bag for Heather to take to Amsterdam to spread a little bit of his ashes there. And then we get this rare flashback of Heather's parents. And I think it was a couple of years, maybe 2 summers ago, I went back and restarted it from the beginning, Orange County, and watched it all over again. And I don't remember having seen her parents, but they did in fact appear on the show at one point. And then Terry and Heather talk about her relationship with her dad and how it was essentially non-existent. And she makes a really sad comment that I'm not going to repeat here, but it's easy to assume that she did not have the very best relationship with her dad. And Terry wants to make sure that Heather didn't marry her dad. He says he can be emotional. In fact, he has cried a few times, like when the Amex bill comes. Ba-dum-bum. That man just cracks himself up. He cracks me up too. I think he's hilarious. So off to Five Vines with Gina and Travis for, I guess, like a little mini date night. And the big news there is that the son that they hadn't seen, Travis's son, who his estranged wife had not allowed Travis to see, is now back with the family. So Joey's back home where he belongs. And I don't know if you noticed it, but I sure did. Travis looks so much happier. And their relationship seems super solid. It's very touching to watch this conversation, and it's really cute that Travis gets emotional and then switches the subject and tries to lighten the moment. Rancho Capistrano Winery is where Tamra and Eddie head for dinner, and she's going to have a pizza. He's going to have the cowboy steak. They're both having club soda with lime and a splash of cranberry, so we're having a dry dinner. And they start talking about how Sophia is leaving the nest and what it means for them. And they had talked about leaving the state, but Eddie doesn't know how she feels. And then I don't know what happens, but the conversation, did you guys notice? It just took this weird pivot. It was just a weird twist where things started to get kind of contentious. And then Eddie basically says that he doesn't like the way Tamra talks to him. It sets him off and it pisses him off, especially when she's drunk. So then Tamra wants to know if Eddie thinks she has a drinking problem. And he says, when it comes to our relationship, I don't think you should drink. So I think the way Eddie said it kind of sets Tamra off. And what you see here, in my opinion, is a real dinner between two people. A real conversation where 1 second you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. We're out to dinner. Yay, woohoo. And then somebody says something that they may or may not have meant that way. And you take it in a way they may or may not have meant. And then your attitude and your mood shifts. And then next thing you know, you're throwing little passive aggressive digs about how the other person chews. And, you know, it's very believable. This conversation actually left me feeling like, okay, I could believe that this happened. And so there is really no like resolution or anything. And then we see a couple of scenes of everybody packing, and then just like magic, we're in Amsterdam. But not before our weekly Shannon foible at the airport, where she shows up with blisters. And I'm telling you, you guys, this girl's a mess. We need to think very carefully about how Shannon fits into the OC zeitgeist anymore, because I don't like the antics, and I don't think she does them on purpose. I think this has just become her personality. The whole like frantic, bewildered, confused woman. It's not appealing to me at all. So it seems to me like they arrived in Amsterdam maybe really late at night or in the middle of the night, because we don't get to see anything until morning time when they're all kind of getting dressed and they're, you know, getting ready to head out for the day. But can we just spend a moment talking about the fashion of it all? Okay, I loved Emily's dress. Not sure I'd be sporting it midday in Amsterdam. I thought Tamra's outfit was really adorable. Don't think it was very becoming on her. I'm not age shaming or anything, but I don't think it was her best look. She's a beautiful woman, and I, contrary to most people, really like Tamra, but I was not feeling this look for her. And as far as Jenn with the lace and the thong underneath, also probably not a great look for midday in Amsterdam. Now, 8:30 p.m. in the red light district, ain't nobody going to be looking one way or the other, but I thought it was a little bit much. So somewhere, some way, I read or heard that the reason they were wearing these outfits was because they were heading straight to dinner after their outing and they weren't going to be able to go back to change. So maybe that makes me feel a little bit better about it, but not really, you guys. I didn't think they were appropriate outfits, even though I would love to be able to wear that dress that Emily was wearing. Hey, maybe I should make that goals. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Anyway, the ladies head through the canals of Amsterdam and they're going to pass by Heather's folks' house. And they do. And it's really kind of touching. Heather's going to come back and I guess spread some ashes and do a little thing. And maybe we'll see that next week. But then Emily walks us through the update of what's going on with Luke and how she is so relieved that they now have a roadmap. And then Emily blames the alcohol for getting the courage to ask Shannon about Tamra's comment about Gene and his drinking. And she says she can't figure it out. Shannon does. And Shannon says that even though the other girls have told her that they believe that Tamra was coming from a place of trying to relate and of trying to be involved, Shannon simply can't forgive her. And so I don't think that this relationship is going to come back, and it'll never be what it used to be. In fact, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but have you seen that it's kind of becoming a new Tres Amigas? I'm not loving it. But I don't even want to give that any air. So I'm going to move on. Have you ever asked someone just point blank? Have you ever asked one of your friends, are you a see you next Tuesday? Oh my gosh. Well, Tamra does. Tamra, Shannon says, well, I was tired of the way you were talking to me. You called me a see you next Tuesday 18 times. And instead of Tamra damping things down, she says, well, are you a see you next Tuesday? Are you? I don't know what she was trying to achieve with that, but if reconciling is it, she's way far off base. And then the ladies, including Madam Shannon and her ladies of the evening, head into what I'm guessing is Amsterdam proper, the town, to kind of wander around. And so we have Shannon, Gretchen, Gina, and Heather. They're going to hightail it over to a dispensary. And then and they're going to have space cakes. It's supposed to be a great, great day. And then we have Emily, Jenn, and Tamra bedazzling penises. Huh? Well, Emily comes away with Dudley the Dick, who is her new friend. Back at the dispensary, the girls take a bite of a space cake. And then while the others are high and giggly, Shannon sneaks a couple of more bites. And it's kind of a funny scene. Just to watch them high is pretty hilarious, in my opinion. And probably what they needed to just let their hair down for a little while, because especially Shannon has been wound entirely too tight all season. So this was by far my favorite Shannon scene all season so far. The power of suggestion leads Emily to ask about Jenn's vagina. Why? I guess because they were decorating penises. I don't know. But remember, Jenn had that vaginal rejuvenation surgery and there was some concern about her being able to be intimate and all of those things and how that would affect what and when and where. And Jennifer's happy to report that everything's back to normal down there. So yay, we can move on. And then we head back to the dispensary and Miss Bougie Dubrow is sucking on a big old fat blunt and trying to pass it over to Gretchen, who says, no, thank you. But I just thought it was a funny moment to see Miss Bougie letting her hair down and doing her thing was quite refreshing, if I'm being honest. So they start talking to Gretchen about why she wanted to include Slade in the conversation with Tamra, and all of the girls told her that they completely and totally disagreed with the fact that Slade needed to be involved and so on and so forth. And Gretchen kind of stands by her man in the moment and says that she thought that he needed to be able to answer for himself. So that whole thing goes nowhere. And then the girls all meet up with one another to have dinner, which is where I'm assuming the shit will hit the fan, because it looks like Shannon's high. Tamra is, in a great mood. Shannon drops her barrette under the table. Tamra takes a deep dive underneath, showing us what she had for breakfast. And then it just kind of comes to an end. They head out to the red light district and they're dancing in the windows, and it looks like something big is going to happen next week, but we're definitely left on a pretty huge cliffhanger. So that was it for Orange County. And honestly, I'm glad that there were no humongous fights this episode. I think that we needed a reprieve from the constant screaming and shouting, and I'm sure that it'll be back next week. So a good break for us. So let's move on to the Real Housewives of Miami reunion part 3. Thank God, the last episode of the reunion. Now, here's the thing. I thought that the season of Miami was really good, actually. And I even thought that the first episode of the reunion was pretty compelling. Last week, episode 2, meh. And definitely, we did not need an episode 3. What was the point? So that Lisa could have a meltdown? I mean, it's a good thing that Larsa apologized to Jody, and they all hugged and made up. But honestly, not a whole lot of stuff happened. The one thing that I noted was I don't think Andy likes Lisa very much. Did anybody catch those passive aggressive side eye glances and eye rolls when Andy would ask Lisa something and she'd come back with, admittedly some ridiculous response or trying to be coy. But it didn't seem to me like Andy was having any of it. And the whole AC thing came up, and we were hoping to get some sort of conclusion or some sort of clarity. Lisa swears that it stands for air conditioning. So if you frequent Miami, you may think differently. And if you want to just move on, then we're going to believe Lisa. So Gertie has her moment. They do her package. I don't want to minimize everything that this woman has gone through. Her journey has been very touching and helpful and inspiring to many. And I don't want to minimize that at all. But I'm struggling with Gertie as a person this season. And so it makes it a little hard to lean in to feeling bad for her. She does get very emotional throughout her packet. She talks a little bit about the fact that she's in therapy now. And then, she comments on how she's going through her journey and she's just trying to get through. And then Julia apologizes yet again. And then we move on to Marisol, and the big news there is that all these years since Mama Elsa has passed away, Marisol has kept the house that belonged to Mama Elsa, and now it's up for sale. And so there's a little bit of a melancholy, feeling across the group, including Andy, when this happens. But Marisol assures us that there is no attachment on behalf of Mama Elsa. And when asked if she would love or like Steve, Marisol is super cute and touching and says that she's convinced that Mama picked Steve for her. And then we get a little bit of shade by way of, I don't know if any of you listened to Dr. Nicole's podcast. I honestly didn't know until very, very recently that she even had one. But apparently she made a comment about how in order for her to come back, a friend would have to leave. And she said a couple of other things, but she was referring to Marisol. And honestly, Marisol seems sick and tired of it. She said something about produce receipts or we'll see you in court. So we don't know what's going to happen with that. I really want to see Nicole back. I'd have to think about how I feel about whether that means that we need to lose Marisol. If it means we need to lose Alexia, I'm good with that. But I need to think about how I feel about losing Marisol. Anyway, I digress. And then it basically just kind of fizzles out. But Andy tries to be cute and gives us a very international farewell. So I'm not trying to be cute, but I'm going to do the same thing. Y Andy Cohen nos dio un brindis y se acabó la reunión. Gracias a Dios. Translation, Andy Cohen ended with a toast and the reunion is over. Thank God. So that's how that one ended. I thought Miami was good. It'll be very interesting to see what cast changes are made. I think that Julia was running like a crazy person trying to catch up with next season's contract, i.e., she's trying not to get fired. And I think she may have pulled it off, if I'm being honest. I have mixed feelings. There's a difference between what I want and what I think will happen, and also what makes good TV. I mean, for the most part, I want what's going to make for good TV. But if I really, really, really just get the ick when I see a particular cast member, then I'd rather them just be gone, even if they are going to make good TV. But I'm still jury out on Julia. At the end of the day, do not care for her too much. But it'll be interesting to see what happens over the off season. I mean, between the time that the third part of the reunion aired and I am recording this podcast, there's already been a ton of Instagram noise surrounding the fact that Martina has sought an attorney to file for divorce in light of her humiliation, allegedly. And then there are pictures of Julia and Martina in which Julia says the picture says it all. In other words, saying that the previous posts about the divorce are not true. It's going to be, we're just going to have to wait and see on that one. I think Larsa is back. Easy peasy because Stephanie's back and the two are besties. I would like to see Stephanie step outside a little more. I think that if Alexia's back, she'll kind of try to work on that relationship. I don't know if Alexia's going to be back. I don't know that this is a popular opinion, but I'm okay if she's not. I'm ready to be done with Alexia because here's the bonus, you guys. If we're done with Alexia, then Todd goes away. Even though he didn't even film this season, he's all over Instagram trying to stay relevant, and it nauseates me. So I don't think Alexia has much more to give to this franchise at this particular moment in time, and maybe it's time for her to have a pause. So you heard it here first. I have a hot take on Alexia and on Miami overall. I think we could have done without this third reunion, and I could have spent my time telling you about other things. For example, there's some really good things going on in my life, in the podcast, and just in general. I think there are some updates and some changes. The beautiful thing about Living on the Verge podcast is that you are really just living on the verge with me. Whatever I'm doing, I'm going to tell you about. It started with talking about reality TV. Sometimes I'll give you my hot take on, a quick weeknight meal or maybe a cool household hack that you can do with all natural ingredients. So essentially you're just living on the verge with me, and my life is taking a little bit of a change in that I am becoming more and more concerned, and not really concerned, but I guess aware and in tune with what is going on inside my body and how I am feeling as I age and how it relates to the food I put into my body. And I've been thinking about this for a couple of months, really since we got back from Europe. But interestingly enough, I'm going to tell you about a trip that I went to with my friend Terry down to Valle de Guadalupe. We went with the Europa winery group, I guess. It was a weekend bus tour down to Valle de Guadalupe to wine taste and have fabulous dinners. And I'll spend a few minutes talking about that in a second. But the reason that I bring this up in the first place is because it was really by chance that I ran into another group of two ladies that I had never met before. They were on the bus, they were with the group, and we talked by accident. And I found out that one of them was from like the Valley area. And one of them was from San Diego. And then I come to find out that they were friends and that they had been friends for over 40 years. They were high school friends, and they had kind of kept their relationship going by meeting in wine country in Temecula to get together and to spend time together, you know, a couple times a year or what have you, among other locations. And so anyway, we started talking, and that's how I met Jenny and Leanne. And I won't spend a lot of time talking about things that I haven't talked to them about being able to share with you. But what I will say is that Jenny and I hit it off immediately. And I wasn't really sure why. I just liked her spirit. She came over, she saw me kind of off to myself on my own, which is pretty typical of me. I always try to find some time to have a quiet moment. Even though I'm pretty social, I enjoy my me time as well. And it was a beautiful, beautiful environment. So I just wanted to take it in. And anyway, she came over and we started chatting. And one thing led to another. And I found out that she was in health and wellness and that she had a podcast. And that's what it basically focused on: healthy living and balancing your hormones, things like that. And, you know, we're on a vacation, so I made a mental note. And then it turned out we were like 2 doors away from one another when we got our room assignments. And at one point, for some reason, I kind of just felt drawn over to her room, and she happened to have the door open. So I just waved. She invited me in, but she was getting ready, so I didn't want to impose on her time. And then for the remainder of the weekend, it seemed that we just kept gravitating to one another. And by the third winery, she reminds me that she and Leanne wanted to sit with Terry and me. And I thought that was really sweet. And they did sit with us, and we had such a good time. And then we ended up sitting together at the dinner that we went to, which I'll tell you a little bit about in a minute. But we just hit it off. By the next day, I had told her I had a podcast too, but you know, a little bit of wine and a lot of conversation and a lot of laughs, and you know, you lose track of what you're talking about. So the next day she said, "Hey, you said you had a podcast. What is it about?" And I told her pop culture, reality TV, food and travel, a little bit of wine, and just living on the verge with me, basically. And she was like, "Wow, I love reality TV." And we started talking about some of the shows. I told her what I was covering, and it was really cool. So that kind of, I guess, reinforced the fact that we really enjoyed one another's company. And so one thing led to another, and we kind of hung out for the rest of the weekend, and then of course exchanged information. And she reached out to me to kind of put my mind at ease about something that I was going to be going through. And I was so grateful that she took the time. I mean, I barely knew her other than having met her that weekend. So for her to take the time to call me and make me feel better and reassure me, it just kind of, I don't know, it reinforced the fact that I liked her and that I thought that we could have a nice relationship and that she was like my kind of people. And so she recently had a birthday, so we chatted a little bit around that, and we've both been listening to one another's podcasts since we got back. And, you know, we text about it from time to time. And all along, I'm still like dealing with this nagging desire to stop aching in my joints, to stop constantly having headaches. I mentioned on this podcast that I was having some like upper abdomen bloating, and I ordered that dose, and I think I'm a week in and I don't notice a significant difference, but I'm going to give it a chance because, you know, I said I would. But things like that, you know, the bloating and stuff like that. And I just kind of started thinking like, I know this has to do with what I'm putting into my body. And I know that I enjoy my alcohol. But there's got to be something that I'm really not aware of. And so then I started looking into things, and I already knew that seed oils are terrible for you. And I opened that Pandora's box and started uncovering what is in a seed oil. I mean, what things seed oil can be found in, which is pretty much all the things. And it's really hard to kind of eliminate it all at once unless you're being really diligent and you're reading labels and you're doing those sorts of things. But I will defer to the pro, and I'm not going to try to educate you guys on the horrificness of seed oils. But what I will say is that I was a pretty heavy smoker, and 5 years ago I made a decision to just cut it cold turkey after 39 years of smoking cigarettes. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. So when I heard on Jenn's podcast that eating seed oils, putting them in your body, is the equivalent of smoking a pack of cigarettes, it was like a knife to my heart. Because if you're a real smoker, you liked smoking. So I didn't like the cost of smoking, the smell of smoking, how much time it took me away from my family, the desire to constantly have a pack of cigarettes, and how at points my whole world would revolve around it. I hated the control it had over me and all of those things. But the idea of smoking a cigarette felt cool, social, fun. I enjoyed it. So I wasn't one of those people that quit because I hated smoking. I was one of those people that quit because I knew that it was terrible for me and that it was going to kill me if I kept going. And even though, it still may have done some damage because of all of the years I spent smoking, the quicker I quit, the better. So I just celebrated 5 years in May, and to have that revelation just busted my bubble in the ugliest of ways. And so I stepped up my efforts to try to rid my life and my home of seed oils. And just that is kind of a task. So I'm taking things little by little and trying to change things. My journey is not one of weight loss per se. I want to improve my health, improve my sleep, balance my hormones, stop having these, symptoms that I've been having for 15 years that absolutely can be controlled. I just know they can. And for the most part, I know that eating clean, healthy food is the way to go. If you look at our groceries on the conveyor belt at the grocery store, we pretty much buy from the perimeter of the market. I don't put box foods in my body. I don't buy a bunch of garbage. But we're not perfect. My husband has a sweet tooth, and I love a salty, savory snack. So getting rid of chips, even though I don't eat them all the time, just the idea that I can't eat them anymore because they're so terrible for you kind of bummed me out. And so it's things like that that I'm little by little trying to adapt. And I'm so excited because I have been talking with Jenn, and she and I are going to be collaborating. And we have not yet figured out how we're going to do all of this or how we're going to bring it to you. But I promise you that I will share my journey with you, whatever that ends up being. And I promise you that if there is any information that I get that helps me improve my life, my habits, my moods, my levels of chronic pain, my hormone fluctuations, or any of those things, I promise that I will share them with you so that hopefully you too could start to feel better. So I'm really excited about embarking on this. I'm going to call it like a health and wellness journey because it's going to be a lifestyle change. This isn't a diet. I'm already pretty healthy as far as I stay active. I go to the gym 3 times a week. I walk every morning, at least I started walking again every morning. I had not done that for a while, and I've been away from the gym for a few weeks, but I get to go back in 2 more weeks. So I'm very excited about that. And, but I'm stuck. I'm stuck where I am, and I'm stuck still dealing with some of the chronic issues that I've been struggling with. And when I see that my mom, who is only 19 years older than me, is basically bedridden and extremely sedentary, it gives me pause for concern, and it motivates me to want to make sure that I do everything I can. So I will leave it there for now. I will, as we go forward, start to tell you some of the things that I am doing already. And then we'll see where this whole journey takes us, but I'll share it with you. I'm really excited to do that. So I'll get back to you with that information. BravoCon's coming. I am trying to, there's been a little bit of a change in plans with regards to my, I guess, accommodations and how the trip was going to pan out. Things have sort of changed a little bit. So I find myself in a different situation, and I have some feelers out there. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that everything works out the way I want it to, because it's going to be an amazing weekend and I can't wait. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more as things go on. So let me tell you a little bit about Valle de Guadalupe. So this trip was sponsored by Europa Winery, and it is something that they do. They don't make any money off of it. It's just something that they do for their members as a kind of thank you, and we're kind of like a family, a group, and so there were 37 of us on a bus. We all met at the winery on Friday morning at 8:00. One of the gals on the bus, we sat at the back of the bus, like the rowdy group, and one of the gals on the back of the bus had brought 4 bottles of sparkling wine for us to enjoy on the way down. So the bus got going. It's probably, I don't know, 10 to 15 minute trip to the freeway. And we had downed a bottle of wine between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us in that amount of time. So there was going to be a lot of fun to be had on this trip. I think we made a pretty significant dent in those bottles by the time we got to our first stop. And so it was really a smooth operation. We crossed the border. We got off the bus. We crossed the border. They asked us where we were going or not. We said we were going wine tasting. Walked through, got back on the bus, and met Michael and David, who were going to be like our group organizers and chaperones all weekend. And he's, I guess, came aboard. The story goes that there was somebody else in charge of these trips. This is the 3rd trip, I believe. I could be wrong. It could be 4, but I think it's the 3rd time they've done this. And apparently things went a little awry last year, and Michael stepped in and saved the trip. And so he's very beloved by all of the people in the bus, and everybody was very happy to see him back. And I could see why. He's a really great guy. We really enjoyed he and David and everything they did for us all weekend. And so that was kind of fun. It changed the energy because he was able to tell us what we were going to do. And so he told us that our first stop was not very far away. So off to Los Portales we went. This place was absolutely gorgeous. There was a amazing view of the ocean. The place is kind of set up high with the ocean down below. We walked in and they were decorating for Dia de los Muertos. And so there were gorgeous sunflowers being put into the fountains. It was just colorful, brilliant. It was gorgeous. And the mood just shifted. Everybody got instantly happy. As you got off, there were little vendors selling, hats, sarapes, things like that. And we were welcomed. We all sat at a couple of long tables, and we were welcomed with the most delicious margarita I've had in recent memory. And then they just kept kind of bringing little botanas, little appetizers, snacks, foods, quesadillas, taquitos. And then we happened to sit at the end of the table, and the owners of Europa came and sat at the head of the table, and they ordered a delicious appetizer tray that served 5 people supposedly. And when I tell you this thing served way more than 5 people, it was the size of a double baking sheet, and it had everything from lobster to shrimp to mojarra to calamari. I mean, it was just beautiful. It was delicious, and there was a ton of it to go around. My friend and I split a lobster dinner, and that was kind of cool. And then we took a group photo. I went and paid for the food, came back. We had a couple of other photos, and it was time to get back on the bus and head to the resort. So off to the resort we headed, and that was called Maglan Resort. And the property is nice. The place is quaint. It's exactly what you would expect in Mexico. I really enjoyed the layout of the resort in that it kind of had like a horseshoe shape with a couple of gorgeous trees in the middle with like a ring around it for congregating and what have you. And because of it, we were all by ourselves. So there was no one else in our area that wasn't part of our group. And that meant we had our own swimming pool and our own jacuzzi. And that was kind of cool. So we all got there, and we were welcomed by yet another margarita. And we all kind of had to congregate there, I'm guessing, while they got our rooms together. I don't know why we had to sit there. There was somebody else on the trip that felt the same way and wondered why we had to wait there so long. But I guess it was neither here nor there. Eventually, we got our room assignments, and we were all let loose to go unpack and get ready, because we were going to be heading to the Humano restaurant that is also on the property for an exclusive curated meal at 7 p.m. And okay, so by this time we'd had a lot of sparkling wine. We'd had a couple of margaritas, and a couple of people were ordering extra drinks in between. Now, I'm not going to name any names, but there were a couple of people that by this time were a little bit wobbly and could definitely use a break before dinner. I, on the other hand, was feeling just fine, and I just wanted to relax. So I threw on some shorts and went and stuck my feet in the jacuzzi and chatted with people for a little while. My friend went off to go unpack and get settled in and ready for dinner. And then we all kind of met, and we were taken on these vans over to the other side of the property for this dinner. So we were seated at a long table, and I was seated across from an attorney and a restaurant owner that lived up north, and next to my friend Terry, and then next to them, or next to Terry, and then on the other side, then I had Leanne and Jenn next to me. And then there were a couple of other people on my left side that come into play in a little minute, because we start to get served what is going to be a wine pairing dinner. And I remember the salad was delicious. I remember that people were really enjoying the salad. And so imagine my surprise when I look to my left and I see somebody reaching over to the person next to them and grabbing salad from their plate with their hand to stick into their mouth. Clearly, I think we were officially in blackout mode by then. And then this was one of those meals where you had to kind of choose like meat, chicken, or fish before you got there. And so I had chosen what I thought was the safest route, which was a filet. And they started serving the mains, and it looked a little odd when they served it. It was like square, like if it had been cut out of like a casserole pan or something. And so, I thought, well, it's got to be a little rough to serve almost 40 people simultaneously and, keep it a dinner service. So I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt. When I tell you this was the worst piece of meat I've ever had in my life, we could not cut through it. Now, granted, they didn't give us steak knives, but you couldn't even cut through it barely with the steak knife. It was overdone. It was not great. And I was incredibly disappointed, mainly because I was really hungry. And also because, we had had a couple of nice glasses of wine and I was looking forward to a nice dinner. So by this time, things on my left are starting to get a little bit loud, like almost to the point where it's a little embarrassing. And so you don't want to look over there to see what's going on. And sure enough, about a quarter of the way through my entree, one of the people who were in blackout mode got up and stormed off into the dark dirt road, only to be chased down by Michael and accompanied back to, I'm assuming, their hotel room or their room in the resort by van. But at one point, they were just going off into oblivion alone. And then they were followed by someone. And so that person ended up leaving with them as well. And I'm purposely being vague because even though I feel it's important that I report this to you, I didn't even really know the people that were acting this way. And so I don't want to put them on blast, and they know who they are, and they probably feel a certain sort of way about things that happened the weekend themselves. So anyway, at the end of the meal, we all kind of headed out and took pictures, and then we waited as we were corralled back to the resort in the van because we had to go in 3 groups or whatever. And then we went back, and some people were going to hang out at the pool. I was tired. I went back to my room, said goodnight to everybody, and we were to meet pretty early. I was going to go for a walk with my friend the next morning. So she and I decided to meet at I think it was 7:00. And then breakfast was included at the hotel. Now, breakfast was good. You had your choice between red or green chilaquiles and eggs, coffee or juice, and the juice was fresh squeezed orange juice, or you could get bacon and eggs. And so, of course, instead of choosing the high protein bacon and eggs, I was like, when in Mexico, eat chilaquiles. So I ordered the red chilaquiles the first morning for breakfast. Terry and I had a really nice walk. And when we got back from the walk, we picked up some friends. So we were told when we arrived there that at many, if not all of the wineries in Valle de Guadalupe, they have dogs that they have adopted, and they're very well cared for. They're spayed and neutered, and they have all of the things, and they get fed and all of that, but nonetheless they do roam around, so just beware. And of course, we're halfway through our walk when up around a bluff I see one dog, and I'm like, yeah, let's just keep on walking. So we keep on walking, and before you know it, there's 4 of them. They were not mean or aggressive at all, but they did want to be petted. And so on our way back, it was hilarious. They decided they were going to walk us all the way back to the resort. So they kind of just followed us back and played with one another and walked us all the way practically to our room until they were shushed off by somebody. So after the walk and breakfast, it was time to meet and board the bus because we had a lot of drinking to do. A lot of wineries to visit, and it turns out a lot of cheese to eat, which was great for me. I love a good cheese, but we started off at Las Nubes, and we had a private tasting with the owner, and it was really good. We tasted 4 different wines, and I know that both my friend and I bought a bottle or 2 there. That's how impressed we were. Delicious flavor, delicious body, and super high alcohol content. We also got a really nice charcuterie board that we kind of picked at. And what I thought was really cool was that at every winery we went to, they had like a specialty homemade cheese, whether it had olives or peppers, or not peppers, pepper, like black pepper, or garlic or smoked Gouda or grilled whatever. Everywhere we went, they had a special cheese. So there was kind of a running joke by the end about if we were going to be able to get any more cheese because, of course, we didn't get enough. So we left that place and that was really pretty. It had a gorgeous view. We took a picture everywhere we went. And then we moved on to Vines Le France winery. And we had another tasting with the owner, where we had another 4 wines. And listen, in Mexico and sometimes in the Temecula Valley as well, if you're having a tasting, it's usually just a sip. But when they're serving a tasting for 40 people, they inevitably have leftover open bottles. So they go out of their way to make sure that, first of all, your first sip at most places is more generous than normal, but then they'll come back and fill up your glass if there's any left. So we had another 4 there. And then we had cheese board, and I think that was my favorite place for the cheese. I think that was a place that they had the delicious cheese with the olives in it. And then you're sitting out there, people are taking pictures. It's gorgeous. It wasn't hot, but it wasn't rainy or like dreary like it had been the day before. So it was kind of a perfect day for what we were doing. And then you think you're done, you've had your 4 glasses of wine, and then, oh no, but wait, it's lunchtime. So we had like a 3-course lunch. They brought us these bao buns that had birria in them, and the birria was lamb birria. And when I tell you, I don't particularly care for lamb birria, this was delicious. Next level. It tasted like beef. Most people didn't even realize it was. And then we had like this little ribeye situation. And then we had some pork belly. So we rolled out of there already having tasted like 8 different wines and had, 2 cheese boards and a very substantial lunch. And guess what? There was one more winery to visit. So off we went to Corona del Valle for a private tasting with the winemaker. This was pretty cool because we got a tour. We got to see the barrel room. We got to see all their stainless steel barrels. We got to go into the library and see their entire collection that they had been developing since their inception. And then we got sort of a little lesson. And then we got escorted outside to these lovely little tables where yet again, we were going to have 4 wines. And guess what? Another cheese board. So this one was also good. But by then you kind of know, listen, I have a 5-star dinner coming up in like 2 hours. And I don't think I can eat anymore. So I picked a little bit at the cheese. By this point in the day, if the wine wasn't next level delicious, I was either tossing it or giving it to somebody who was enjoying it. And I made sure that by this point in the day, the person I was giving it to wasn't the person that had the issue the night before. However, beware. You cannot control what other people do, and people will still be people. That place was lovely. You were able to jump on a bike and ride around the winery. There was really cool photo ops. They had a little shop where you could buy jewelry. And then we were off to Fauna Restaurant, which was a beautiful, probably unforgettable for me experience. It is a locally sourced, farm to table, completely sustainable restaurant that was just so great. So we get off of the bus down the hill. We have to kind of walk up this dirt road to the restaurant. There are 37 people that they are checking in, and we are all seated at this really long table. The whole restaurant is al fresco, outdoors, and so they have the beautiful lights hanging. The vibe is really cool. It's kind of casual, but yet really special. And so I sat at the very, very, very far end of the table, and which I guess would be considered the back of the table. And I just kind of wanted to be out of the way. And Terry sat next to me, and then we had Jenn and Leanne sitting next to us on the right-hand side. And so we got ready for what was to be an amazing experience culinarily. So this restaurant is on the Bruma Wine Resort, and I believe they have like accommodations where you could sleep there as well. I didn't look into all of that, but I'm definitely hoping to go back there on my own. And I'll tell you why when I'm all done with this review. But the whole reason that we were there was for a wine and dinner pairing, and they do like synchronized service where they kind of all serve at the same time, and it just looks really beautiful. But it was a little bit hard for us to kind of get that because we were in such a large group. So we ended up having this oyster with cayenne oil and tomato water, which was just absolutely delicious. And they paired that with a Plan B Sauvignon Blanc, which was okay. And then they brought out this bowl that just had like shackled cucumbers covering the entire top. And we were told that we needed to mix it around. And this was served with the Ocho Blanc de Noix. And that was a poached callus with hazelnut butter. And so this, I don't know what the hell was in this, but it was so good. I could have eaten this whole thing. And so the way they would do it is they'd bring out, it's farm to table, but it's all family style. So they would bring out, say, one serving for maybe 4 people. And they would come and announce what the dish was, and then they would bring out another one. And sometimes they'd bring out 2 or 3 at the same time. And then one of the things that was my favorite was the braised lamb with the chihuahulet chili sauce. Oh my gosh. I said that wrong. It's chihuacle chili sauce. And it's like a smoky, picture a not, I don't know. For those of you who don't like chipotle, this would be if you liked the smokiness of chipotle and the depth of flavor, but without the super heat. And this was served with a Montepulciano, which was called the Bastardo, and that was my favorite wine. In fact, had things not gone a little awry at the end, I probably would have brought a bottle of that home. My intention was to bring a couple of bottles, but I ended up only bringing the one that I got at the first winery. So anyway, they brought out this one humongous broccoli that was just supposed to be a broccoli, and they just plopped it down on the table. When I tell you the sauce under this broccoli was so good. It had notes of like chimichurri, but with the richness that just paired with the course that we were being served and the wine that we were drinking in just a beautiful way. And then, they just kept bringing food. I believe it was 7 courses. And then, of course, dessert was the 7th course. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think we got 4 or 5 desserts that we were able to enjoy. And I can tell you that that was one of the most wonderful experiences culinarily that I've had recently. And the only thing that I will say negatively about this is because we were in such a large group, we did not get the benefit of being able to, for example, we met the chef, but he was at the other side of the table. So we didn't really get to hear what he had to say about what our experience was going to be. He sent out his sous chef to our side of the table. There was a little bit of a language barrier, so I found myself translating for the group around me what she had just said. That was a little off-putting to some people there. And the other thing was, because of the largeness of our group, we were not really able to benefit from the synchronized serving because there were just too many of us. There was just no way in the world. I don't think they had enough staff to serve 40 people all at once. But it did not take away from the deliciousness of the food. And it did not deter me from wanting to go back there. That was indeed for me by far the highlight of the weekend. Although, to be honest with you, the company was probably my favorite part. I had a really good time in fellowship with my friend Terry, meeting new friends that by the end of the weekend, we were laughing and giggling with one another. So it was all pretty great as far as that was concerned. So we get done with dinner at Fauna, and my friend and I had headed off to go to the restroom. And when we get back, we find out that two of the people that were there together had gotten into a fight, and one had stormed away from the table. And yes, it was the same person that had caused a scene by over drinking and storming off the night before. So by this time, it's just not going well. There's a tiff in their group, and I'm just trying to enjoy my evening, man. And I don't understand why grown people can't control their alcohol consumption, but I guess that's not for me to judge. So back to the resort we went, and then we woke up, redid breakfast the next day. The bus left probably around 10:30, and we went to Vino's Air Wine, and we had charcuterie, of course, and gourmet sandwiches that we had ordered on the way down. And Michael surprised us with a lovely harpist. So this winery was really pretty. You just kind of sat up on a bluff. You could see almost 360 degrees into the Valle. And I was so surprised by how many wineries there were and how delicious some of these wines were. So if you didn't know, don't sleep on Valle de Guadalupe. They have some delicious wines down in Mexico. And one of the things I found out was you can get some of these wines here in the States at Cárdenas Market. So that's where I'm going to be heading when I want to go get my wine that I was able to taste there. So let me end this with, I guess bookending the experience in that it's time for us to get on the bus. Michael's not going to cross the border with us. So because I am the only person on board who speaks Spanish, he asked me, because there's some funny business going on, to escort the group across the border. And so I agreed to do that. Imagine my surprise when 30 to 40 minutes later, the bus is still sitting there waiting for one person who refused to get on the bus. The person sitting under the bar with no shoes on, getting ready to get physical and mean with the person who was trying to convince them to get on the bus because it was time to leave. So I was a little concerned about this person being sober enough to be able to get off the bus and cross the border and not get the rest of us in trouble. Listen, the trip was great. I'm even considering going again next year. If I don't do that, I would love to head back down and do like a winery trip with my friends and then just have a lovely dinner at Fauna with no more than like 6 people so that we could enjoy it all. The lesson, the takeaway is be careful who you befriend before you watch them in action. Because had I known what this person was capable of on Friday morning, I would have completely disengaged immediately and not even been a part of the fact that for 3 days, this person caused a scene in our group. And it was, I didn't know them and I didn't bring them or I'd have been embarrassed. But Dr. Doug, who was the sommelier, my friend, and of course, one of our group leaders on this trip, he helps organize the trip. He made it very clear that some were not welcome back next year. So this is one of those trips where you got to behave because it's a special treat and you got to have a good time without infringing on everybody else's good time. So I loved it. We got back. Everything was lovely. I jumped in my car. I came home on Sunday afternoon and I could not wait to tell my husband about it. And it's been a couple of weeks, but I honestly couldn't wait to tell you guys about it either. I've just had trouble fitting it in because we've been so busy with other things. But there you have it. If you have not gone down to Mexico, to Baja, to the Valle to have wine, this is your request. This is your reminder to do so post haste. Thanks, you guys, for spending this hour with me. I know the podcast ran a little bit long today, but I appreciate you indulging me. I'm excited about all the changes going forward with regards to a little bit of the format of the podcast. I do want to mention that going forward, our podcasts will be released on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And if we have a special guest, we'll probably release those on Wednesdays. You guys, that's it for today. I appreciate your time. I hope you are having a wonderful week. Come back, spend some time with me again later this week. In the meantime, I'll be here living on the verge. Bye.